Hi, it's Dr. Mercola, and today I'm here with Joe Salatin on his farm in Virginia. And he's really one of the pioneers of sustainable agriculture. And really, you know, as a physician, it's really painfully obvious to me, and I'm sure most of you viewing this, that what we eat has a large control over what our ultimate health is. And clearly we need to get back to the source of our food, and this constant reliance is 90% of the food that Americans eat is processed food. So we really want to get back to our roots and understand how the food is going, who is producing our food. So Joel has done this tremendous job of really pioneering processes that really allow farmers to grow food in an efficient manner. But then the challenge is that many of these farmers aren't really very good marketers. So interestingly, there's been a movement, thanks to the internet and software developments and electronics and such, that allows this transition. So I'm wondering, Joel, if you can update us on some of the changes in the industry that you've seen recently that really suggest that, you know, things could change pretty rapidly for the better.
Sure. Yeah, I love it when we take technology developed for globalism, and it becomes the way in for localization. And the internet is one of those things. .com, the whole e-commerce thing. And one of the things that's been happening, and I love farmers markets, but farmers markets have built-in problems. There's a lot of politics. They're confined to their space for both vendors and parking. And many farmers markets are not accepting new vendors because
and they have limited hours.
They have limited hours. The farmer has to come, you know, with stuff and then go home and put stuff away. Mm-hmm. You know, all of these elements. And so what's developed in the last couple of years, literally, is just I'm going to call it a minor grassroots explosion in essentially virtual electronic farmers markets, where software is being developed to be able to present an electronic shopping cart, some sort of an electronic a supermarket experience, if you will, to a customer online, working with a cadre of farmers behind the scenes that are also profiled. You know, want more information on this farm? Boom, you know, take a virtual tour. The farmer can sit there and do a 2-minute tour around the farm, and you can see things. But using this amazing electronic informational interface without bricks, mortar, and cashiers to actually create economies of scale and efficiencies to be able to aggregate on a local scale to get economies of scale and efficiencies that the industry currently enjoys, but on a localized, on a micro scale. And so we're collaborating with one group right now that's working with about 100 farms within 100 or 150 miles, and they do a weekly shopping cart using moonlighting Papa John's pizza delivery drivers. Mm-hmm. And everybody orders the day, you know, once a week, and then they come around to the different farms, pick up everything, spend all night aggregating it into the customized boxes, you know, for Jim Smith, Jane Doe, blah, blah, blah. And then they put them about 20 boxes in the cars and dispense them at 5 o'clock in the morning, and by 8 o'clock, they're all done. And the people put it in their fridge before they go to work. It's an extremely efficient. What they say is that they can way undersell places like Whole Foods and have it fresher, way fresher,
and higher quality,
and higher quality and cheaper, because they don't have to inventory it, and they get rid of the bricks and mortar. Mm-hmm. And all of
it's a huge cost.
It's a huge cost. All those shelf stocking and all that.
The rent and the heat, yeah, and the air conditioning.
Exactly. We're working with another fella that is using the internet website to create a schedule for office workers in the metropolitan sector. Took an old school bus, he ripped out everything, and put in essentially an old general store motif, you know, burlap and crude boards and stuff. He's got his bins, freezer, potbelly stove, couple rocking chairs, and he prints what he has. He's essentially a gopher. Gophers this stuff, you know, from about 30 or 40 farms, puts it on the bus, takes it into the office, the big office complexes in the urban centers. People come out on their work breaks and shop, And it's efficient for them because now they don't even have to make that left-hand turn into the supermarket on their way home. And so that's efficient. Another one that we're just working with here in Stanton, called Stanton Fresh, is an entrepreneurial activity. Literally one guy said, I want to become a local food aggregator. I want to be that. So he's taking about a 10 or 15% markup, which the average supermarket takes about a 35 or 40% markup. He's taking about a 10% markup, running it as a sole business, a little sole proprietorship. Essentially, he bought the software from some company in Oregon or something, and has about a dozen or 15, maybe as many as 20 local farmers signed up with a wide array of items, and people will buy once a week, and then he'll come out with his truck, pick everything up, and meet everybody at a location once a week, and they get their stuff, and they've shopped once a week from what's available locally. But they get to do it on their time. They don't have to get up on Saturday morning and go to farmer's market.
Sure.
The farmer doesn't have to get up and go to town.
And it's delivered to their home.
Yeah.
And I mean, how much easier does it get than that?
Or in this case, they're going to go to a pickup spot.
Or it's a convenience at their office.
Or it's a convenience near where they are.
Certainly simpler than going to the store.
Exactly.
So,
so all these systems are trying to use this amazing cheap information-friendly interface and take the big overhead components out, and I just think it's very exciting.
It is very exciting, and there'll be an article with this interview, and then we'll hopefully have some resources that people can contact so they can find this software, and they could, as an entrepreneur, you don't have to be a farmer. There's a lot of people out of work and who are really skilled, and they could take this on as a venture with very low capital investment and create a phenomenally beneficial service to so many people. So, and there's opportunity for tens of thousands of people to do this. Yeah. So, but one of the points I'd like to emphasize too is that after having you graciously provide us with a tour of your process of your farm, where you're raising poultry, pasture-raised poultry and beef, it is very, very clear that this is a possibility, and that most people watching this don't even realize that it's possible. And part of the problem is that there's an enormous number of farmers who would do this, but there's just not a demand for that. So I can't strongly encourage you enough to recognize this possibility and to go out, take some time, effort, and energy. Don't watch a movie here or there. Skip that. Invest that time in finding a farmer, convincing them to employ the resources that you've developed over the last 40 years to provide this type of product, because a lot of people, and I think justifiably so, vegetarians are really annoyed and disturbed with the factory farm process. And I think they should be. Yes. But we've done a tour of your farm. This is nothing like this. This is a completely different universe. Mm-hmm. So what resources would you recommend for the average person watching this to recommend to their farmer, their local farmer, if they wanted to engage and really learn more about this? What resources would they suggest, or how did they contact you, or what's the process they should begin to get up to speed on this?
Well, I think every community right now has what I call farm treasures around it, and many of them are very small. But as a non-farmer, as an eater, as a consumer, you need to get into that network of every state has a sustainable ag organization or a biological farming organization that is the nucleus of those farmers in that state. There are more and more eat local, buy local directories now available. Look at those farms that have been in there. And I couldn't agree more. Ultimately, wouldn't it be nice if you or I could click our fingers and say, you know what? Nobody has to do anything to really change the food system. But that's not true. Mm-hmm. The food system that we have right now is the summation of decades of billions and billions of individually made decisions to buy a Snickers bar and not this, or buy a flat screen TV instead of this, or buy potato chips instead of potatoes and lard and make them yourself. What we have is a physical manifestation of all these billions and billions of decisions. Where we will be in 20 years will also be a physical manifestation of where we are. And so each one of us needs to understand the power of one, the power of that single decision, day by day. And so you know, when it comes up to the fall, and you're looking at those Caribbean cruises, say, wait a minute, we're gonna go in 2 weeks, not this week, because this is a week. This frost is going to happen, and I'm going to go and find at farmers market or a CSA or another local farmer and find out where I can get, you know, 3 slightly blemished bushels of tomatoes at the end of the season, and we're going to spend a week making salsa and tomato and canning tomato juice and making tomato leather, and we're going to do that, and that's what we're going to eat this winter. Just to begin understanding that our ecological umbilical and ultimately our own personal well-being is going to only be as good as the participatory responsibility that we bring to the table.
So, but that's great. I agree. That's what we can do as a consumer. But if a consumer wants to find an potentially interested farmer like yourself, right. I mean, not as advanced as yourself, what type of resources would the farmer do?
The farmer
to get up to speed to what you're doing.
Well, I mean, there's I mean, I've written numerous books.
Okay, any that would you recommend more than others? Because I mean,
I think the first one would be Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. I mean, to me, that really describes the paradigm, the heart and soul of, and it's a fun book. I mean, it's a fun book. But beyond that, certainly in the pasture-based livestock, the Stockman Grass Farmer magazine is the world leader. Published out of Jackson, Mississippi. It is the world leader in the whole pasture-based how-to. It's pasture-based by farmers for farmers. Another one certainly would be Acres USA magazine, which is broader. It brings the grains in, but Acres USA, would be a good one. And beyond that, certainly to link up with a local Weston A. Price chapter, get the Mercola newsletter, get linked up with what I call the tribe, the tribe that's thinking differently. And what you'll find is that there's a tremendous amount of resource and help. Our website, our Polyface website, lists the chicken waterers and the aluminum fencing and the energizers and the full flow valves and the shade cloth and all these things that you've seen here on this tour that we use.
Yeah, not very costly, but still you have to find them somewhere.
You have to find them. They're all listed in our resource section. Here's what we use. Even a good post hole digger. Don't get your post hole digger from Lowe's. I mean, I have nothing against Lowe's. We go to Lowe's plenty, get screws and things like that. But if you want really good, multi-generational heavy tools, go to A.M. Leonard or some good company like that has that makes 10-pound post hole diggers. So there are resources out there on our website and others. We link to other websites where people can find not only the information but the infrastructure, the hardware, the actual physical hardware to make this work. And then beyond that, you just have to start, and that's the hardest part. We have this saying that if it's worth doing right. Well, that's wrong. If it's worth doing poorly first, because nobody does it right the first time. I mean, can you imagine at a family function, and little Janie, the latest family edition, crawling around on the floor, and everybody's sitting there at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, and suddenly Janie, climbs up the chair leg, and she gets up, and she kind of hangs on, she toddles around, and everybody says, "Oh, look, Janie's starting to walk," and they get all excited. And of course, Janie then, she grins, loses her focus, and plop, she falls down on the ground on her diaper. Well, does everybody gather around her and say, "Well, Janie, if you can't walk any better than that, just quit"? No, they say, "Oh, look, she's starting to walk her, try again, blah, blah, blah." But as adults, for some reason, we have this, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And so, I have women coming up to me, I'm sexist here, I'm afraid a canner might blow up. What if it blows up, I'm afraid to cook anything because, what if it doesn't taste good, And I say, look, if it's worth doing poorly first. A farmer, you're not gonna make the paddock size correct, and everything's not going to be healthy the first time. But But you learn by doing, and you become skillful by jumping in and starting. And so if it's worth doing poorly first.
Yeah, Thomas Watson Sr., the guy who developed IBM,
Yes.
was really popularizing that saying, fail and fail often and fail frequently, just learn from your mistakes.
Right.
But as adults, we've developed this fear of failure, but it's just sort of entrenched into us, but it's really highly counterproductive.
Yeah, oh, it is. And Edison, when I think it was the light bulb, like the 72nd experiment, and it failed, and his staff was scared to come and tell him that this didn't work, and they finally came and told him, and he says, "Oh, wonderful! That brings us one step closer to the solution." Then
yeah, we know when that doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, what a great attitude, what a great spirit, and so we need to take that in our own lives as farmers, as eaters, as all this. None of us has all the answers today. But we're all on this quest. We're all learning, and we're bumbling and stumbling, but when you're out there trying, if you seek, you will find.
Yes, there's been a transition away from these small farms to big, large corporate factory farming, and you're really fighting that trend with some of the techniques you've developed.
Right.
And I'm wondering if you could comment on the whole process, and what do you see as an industry leader?
Well, what I see is a growing conflict between the two models, and I think the one model is predicated on essentially a mechanistic view toward life, and the other one is a biological view toward life. And so, in our culture, we've only because we as a culture, we view life as fundamentally mechanical. We're asking, how do we grow the pig faster, fatter, bigger, cheaper? And that's all that matters. And I would say our side asks, how do we make the pig happier and more piggy, more expressive of its pigness, and that recognizes the fundamental honor and sacredness of that life form, of that being, if you will. And that's the fundamental difference. And so the amalgamation of farms has followed a mechanistic view where machinery does run more efficiently when it runs 24/7. A bigger earth mover is more efficient than a smaller earth mover because the bucket's bigger and it still only takes one operator to move more cubic yards of material. And so a mechanistic view does move a culture toward size, scale, and toward an inability to account for some of these unseen things. What's happening now is E. coli, salmonella, mad cow disease, C. diff, MRSA. I call that the biological P&L statement that is starting to come to the fore and create an awareness that, maybe just growing it fatter, faster, bigger, cheaper isn't all there is. Maybe there is more. Maybe it does matter if the earthworms are healthy. Maybe you can't just replace earthworms with 10-10-10 fossil fuel fertilizer.
Yeah, and many people viewing this too, they don't realize that what's behind this push towards a mechanistic model. It's not this farming industry per se, but it's really the chemical industry.
Well, it's the chemical industry, but I think beyond that, it's a paradigm. It's a cultural worldview that to where we have segregated our own personal responsibility, even for our own health, and foisted off on the expert over there. He's going to fix me. We've segregated our responsibility for the food we eat to Procter & Gamble and Tyson, and we've said, I'm going to put my faith in them, and by proxy they will make the decisions for me, and we've essentially moved our culture from where we had a visceral participation in air, soil, food, and water 100 years ago, to where now, the average American is far more informed and passionately interested in the latest belly button piercing and Hollywood celebrity culture than what's going to become flesh of their flesh and bone of their bones at 6 o'clock. And so I think that farmers have essentially done what consumers asked was, I want to be liberated from the kitchen. Give me TV dinners, give me Velveeta cheese, squirtable stuff. Give me, breakfast cereals and Cheerios and Pop-Tarts and Cocoa Puffs. And so guess what? Farmers have moved then, as people have come out of the kitchen and have essentially subcontracted that to large food processors. That has separated people from taste, texture, and the old historical nuances of food, and created then a commodification of agriculture to where, for example, Dolly Madison's cookbook, or Martha Washington's cookbook, while you look in there, they ate boysenberries and juneberries and currants. And I mean, just look at the berries. Why, there were 20, 30 berries that they had. Today, we have strawberries, blueberries. Is that about it?
Blackberries.
Blackberries, yeah. But we just don't have in a supermarket. We just don't have that kind of variety that we did. And so, what's happened is that farms that when you have a mechanical view for life and segregate it, what it does is it puts the pressure on farms to get bigger and bigger and bigger because of the economies of scale of mechanical anything. And as we know, artisanal anything must be small scale. The difference between a pot made on a potter's wheel as an individual craft, as an extension of a person's soul, if you will, compared to a pot made in a mass-produced factory, the difference is that this one has character, integrity, and often has nuances that this one over here won't have. And certainly the same thing is true in food. And so ultimately, we as individuals need to appreciate that we have created the food system that we have. I don't like this, it's because of them, or it's because of that, or it's because of this. Ultimately, we have the food system that we have because that's what we want.
Well, it's really the most empowering too, because someone else is responsible for it. It really is very little you can do.
Exactly.
But if we take responsibility,
Yes.
take control of them, there's quite a bit that we can do. So.
If every American tomorrow decided to not eat at a fast food place, it would collapse the whole thing
Overnight.
And that doesn't take an act of Congress. It doesn't take a grant. It doesn't take a regulation.
Or an election.
Or an election. Yeah, exactly. And that's why our slogan is we're healing the land one bite at a time. We want people to understand that when you eat, that is a decision that affects the landscape our children will inherit. And you can make that decision independent of politics and everything else. You can make that decision 3 times a day. And there are thousands of farmers like us, many of them smaller than us, around the farm, around the world, around the country, that are waiting to serve that clientele.
Yeah. But only if there's enlightened people who understand this. So it's really it's a very powerful message.
That's right.
That we have the ability to do this. We need to be empowered to recognize that, to take steps, to know that it doesn't matter if you fail initially. That ultimately, as long as you're persistent, you're going to have a fair measure of success.
That's right.
So again, we can't encourage you strongly enough to go out there and take the steps and really do what it takes to take control of the food that you're eating, because the resources are out there. They exist. It's not some nebulous cloud that the other person in some far state or some larger urban area or some rural area is going to do. It's you can do it yourself. You just have to. It's going to take a little effort and time, but it's beyond worth it.
It sure is. Yeah, it sure is beyond worth it. In the last 35 years, we've exchanged 9% of our per capita expenditure on health care and 18% on food to today in 35 years, 9% on food and 18% on health care. To me, could those possibly be related? And when we talk about quality of life and self-empowerment, to put a little attention on the food might help a lot of other things fall into place.
Yeah, I think the numbers are such that it's like the average person is spending less than 10% of their income on food. And in many places of the world, certainly in the past, it was 25, 30, 35%. So the factory farming method has been enormously successful at providing a product that's inexpensive and tastes good, but really the artifact of that, as you mentioned, is the health statistics, that we're spending a lot more for health.
Well, the externalized costs, which include soil loss, environmental degradation, health costs, just animal welfare issues, nutrient deficiency. I mean, these are all externalized costs. Nature bats less. Our ecological womb has its own P&L statement, and we had better look at that P&L statement and say, let's live differently, eat differently, buy differently, participate differently, so that we get on the positive side of that ecological womb's P&L statement.
Because no one's charging us for those externalized costs. Those are sort of debits we're delaying for ourselves or for our grandchildren.
Exactly.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being a leader in the industry, and really so inspiring, and providing us with a message of empowerment and encouragement that we can do it. So really thank you for all you're doing, and I look forward to the amazing impact you're going to have.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. Thank you.